Welcome to episode 12 of the Statesmanship Project. We are going to continue our discussion with the equation for program success. In today's episode, we are going to discuss duration. This is the third variable in our numerator for our equation. And duration most basically refers to the length of time of your training session. So if it's an hour in duration. If it's 5 minutes, it's 5 minutes in duration. If it's 30 seconds, it's 30 seconds in duration. Now, typically, volume is a function of duration. So the more volume you do, the longer your training program is. Whether that is volume in number of exercises, volume in number of sets, volume in number of reps, volume in any combination, that determines duration. Rest periods also can affect your duration, but rest periods typically impact intensity more so than volume, because a 5x5 with moderate weights might take you a half hour, or if you reduce your rest interval, the same amount of weights might take you 15 minutes. Now you've just increased your work capacity, which means you've increased the intensity of the training session. The duration is less, the volume is same, but the intensity is higher. And this requires a greater amount of recovery in order to overcome it. So duration most directly impacts our recovery time. So if we're training for 3 hours and we expect to train again the next day, this gives us 21 hours of recovery time. Now, if we plan to train in 2 days, this gives us 45 hours of recovery time, and subsequently, depending on how much longer apart our training session is. Now, if our training session is 15 minutes, we then have 23 hours and 45 minutes to recover until we train again. Of course, intensity impacts the amount of time necessary for recovery, but specifically we are trying to understand the variable of duration. So, high volume, low volume, long training, short training, it is all relative, dependent upon the program and dependent upon your two other numerator variables, so intensity and frequency, and how much rest you're giving yourself. So if you're able to recover from training for 3 hours a day, every day, then you're going to be successful. However, if you're not able to recover from that and adapt, then you're not going to be successful. So this is what we have to keep in mind when we're looking at a potential program. Is there so much volume that we can't recover from it? Am I spending so much time exercising that I cannot facilitate recovery and adaptation in the amount of time that I have available until my next training session? So this is where something like easy strength and Mike Mentzer style high intensity training are on opposite ends of the spectrum. So the volume and thus the duration for both of these programs is very low. So you spend 10 to 15 minutes doing an easy strength training session, and you spend 10 to 15 minutes doing a Mike Mentzer style high intensity training session. Now with easy strength, you're probably going to be back in the gym the next day doing the same thing. With a Mentzer style HIIT, you won't be back in the gym for another 4 days, maybe longer. And you might not hit that specific grouping of muscles or exercises for 16 days or longer, depending on how long your interval is between training sessions. And with that specific understanding, it highlights the difference that intensity plays. So easy strength, the intensity is very low. Mentzer style high intensity training, the intensity is very high. So you're pushing yourself to absolute failure, and thus you have to put in ample amount of time for recovery and adaptation in order to get the optimal results of the program. With easy strength, the intensity is so low that our frequency can be high, and thus, because our duration and therefore volume is low, we can increase our frequency and we have enough time to adapt and recover from it. Now, the stimulus with easy strength is primarily focused on the neurological. We are conditioning the muscles to move an easy weight repeatedly, so that way we become more efficient at the movement. Now, it doesn't mean you don't move weights that are challenging, it just means you don't challenge yourself anywhere near your upper level capacity. That way we can recover and adapt. With Mensa style training, you are stimulating yourself at the absolute top end of your capacity. The goals of these two programs are different. You will get stronger on both, but Mensa's goal with his training is specifically to generate as much hypertrophy as possible. And so he's maximally stimulating the muscles and then giving them as much time as possible to recover until they're stimulated again. With easy strength, we're maximally, not even maximally, we're intentionally stimulating the neurological system frequently, specifically the somatic nervous system frequently, so that way it becomes more efficient and our body and thus our muscles adapt to that stimulus as well. And because the two stimuli are different with two separate goals, the intensity is different, the duration of training can be the same, frequency is polar opposites, and we are able to recover from them because of the differentiation and variability in the other variables. Now, both programs will work for a certain amount of time for certain people. It's all dependent upon the person, the goals, the training. If you want to be a high-level Olympic lifter, I don't think Mensa style training is going to be the best approach for you. However, if you want to be Mr. Olympia, there's a good case that that style of training will work for you. Just look at Dorian Yates, or you can look at Mike Mensa himself. Never won Mr. Olympia, but probably would have had he stuck in the sport. So with that in mind, we want to understand how our duration of training impacts our ability to recover. So this brings us back to our original principle. We don't want to do as much as we can. We want to do as little as possible to facilitate the change that we're looking for. It's the minimum requirement for adaptation. And so if you can do in one set what someone else says they need 4 sets to do, then don't do 4 sets, do 1 set. And you will have that much more time for recovery and adaptation. If it takes you 2 or 3 sets, then it takes you 2 or 3 sets. If it takes you 1 set a day, 5 days a week for 8 weeks to get the adaptation that you want, do it that way. The goal here with this equation is to help you evaluate your own training program, your own training protocols, so that you can achieve your own training goals. And tomorrow we will get into how to apply this program. I talked about it a little bit, how to apply the equation for program success to your specific goals and your specific situation. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. And until next time, have a good day.